Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have just completed their joint address following the key bilateral meeting held in Washington, D.C. There were lots of talking points which have come out of it. On a question about tariffs and possible trade deals between India and the U.S., President Trump said that Prime Minister Modi is a great leader, adding that we are going to make some wonderful trade deals for India and the U.S. Crucially, President Trump has also hinted at potential deals with India in terms of India buying crude oil and LNG from the U.S. Another big one, President Trump has cleared the extradition of 2611 plotter Tahawwur Rana. The U.S. president has also said that the United States will sell F-35 fighter jets to India, which would join the elite club of countries with the state-of-the-art stealth planes. Remember, this was the first bilateral meeting between India and the United States since Trump took over as the U.S. president for the second time just 3 weeks ago. President Trump also added that relationship with India and Prime Minister Modi has never been better. In fact, let's take a look at some of the excerpts coming out from their joint address.
हम मानते हैं कि भारत और अमेरिका का साथ और सहयोग एक बेहतर विश्व को शेप कर सकता है। फ्रेंड्स, अमेरिका के लोग राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप के मोटो मेक अमेरिका ग्रेट अगेन यानी मागा से परिचित है। भारत के लोग भी विरासत और विकास की पटरी पर विकसित भारत 2047 के दृढ़ संकल्प को लेकर तेज गति शक्ति से विकास की ओर अग्रसर है। अमेरिका की भाषा में कहूं तो विकसित भारत का मतलब मेक इंडिया ग्रेट अगेन यानी मिगा। जब अमेरिका और भारत साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं यानी मागा, मागा प्लस मिगा, तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी। और यही मेगा स्पिरिट हमारे लक्ष्यों को नया स्केल और स्कोप देती है।
The United States and India will be working together like never before to confront the threat of radical Islamic terrorism, a threat all over the world, actually. Today, I'm pleased to announce that my administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India. So he's going to be going back to India to face justice. We're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately, and there are more to follow because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime, and we want to make it good for India, and it's very important. So that kind of a relationship is very important to us.
आप जानते हैं, मैं रशिया और यूक्रेन दोनों से लगातार संपर्क में रहा हूं। मैं स्वयं भी दोनों देश की मुलाकात कर चुका हूं। बहुत से लोगों का एक भ्रम है कि भारत न्यूट्रल है। मैं साफ करना चाहता हूं, भारत न्यूट्रल नहीं है। हमारा अपना एक पक्ष है और हमारा पक्ष है शांति, पीस। और मैंने इसी एक हमारे सिद्धांत को लेकर के राष्ट्रपति पुतिन की हाजिरी में मीडिया के सामने स्पष्ट रूप से कहा था कि युद्ध का समय नहीं है। और आज भी मेरा कन्विक्शन है कि युद्ध के मैदान में समस्याओं के समाधान नहीं निकलते हैं, अल्टीमेटली वार्ता के टेबल पर ही होते हैं। और भारत का लगातार प्रयास रहा है कि दोनों लोग जिसमें मौजूद हो वैसे फोरम में बातचीत होगी, तब कोई रास्ता निकलेगा। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप जो प्रयास कर रहे हैं, मैं उनका स्वागत करता हूं, समर्थन करता हूं और मैं चाहता हूं कि राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप हो सके उतना जल्दी सफल हो ताकि दुनिया में शांति के रास्ते खुले।
Russia has gotten themselves into something that I think they wish they didn't. If I were president, it would not have happened. Absolutely would not have happened. And it didn't happen for 4 years. If you look at what has taken place under President Bush, they lost a lot. Under President Obama, they lost Crimea. Under Biden, it looks like they could lose the whole thing. Under Trump, they lost nothing. Ukraine lost nothing. They didn't give up anything. And you take a look at the other three presidents surrounding me, they gave up a lot. I think that when you look at Ukraine and when you look at the mess that they're in, it's got to be ended and it's got to be stopped. Now, Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory, and they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war, and Biden said it, and Zelensky said it, and I think that was one of the reasons, one of the starts of the war. But from long before Putin, they said you cannot have Ukraine going in any way into NATO. And I start from that standpoint. I think everybody knew that. Now, if a better deal can be negotiated, if they are able to make a deal where they can do that, that's fine with me. I really don't care. I want that bloodshed to stop. I don't want to see, we have an ocean between us and the site we're talking about, the site of death. We're calling it the fields of death. We have a big ocean in between us. This is more important for Europe. We shouldn't be in. They have to equalize, and they're going to have to do it fast, but they have to equalize. But as far as the negotiation, it's too early to say what's going to happen. Maybe Russia will give up a lot. Maybe they won't. And it's all dependent on what is going to happen. The negotiation really hasn't started. But I will say, as far as NATO is concerned, from many years before President Putin, I will tell you that I've heard that Russia would never accept that. And I think Ukraine knew that because Ukraine wasn't in and never requested to be in until more recently. So that's the way it is. And I think that's the way it's going to have to be.
President Trump, they're talking about the Russia-Ukraine war, discussing all the key takeaways and what we saw over the past few hours playing out in Washington, D.C. I am being joined on the show now by Angela Chitkara, founder and CEO of US-India Corridor, and also Major General Sanjay Soy, Defense and International Affairs expert. Thank you to both of you for joining me so early this morning. Angela, coming to you first. I just want to start by asking both of you what have been your key takeaways or highlights from this meeting and the joint address.
Okay, thank you, and good morning to you. Good morning. So there was a lot to take in. And I think there was a lot to clarify here. So beginning with the tariffs, right? So there was no, President Trump did not impose tariffs, right? That did not go into effect today. It was on NDTV, in fact. It was your reporter who made that clarification on site, that it was a 6-month study to assess tariffs. That's one. The increased military sales, fine. But this world has become interdependent. The relationship between U.S. and India is an interdependent one. That means that whatever happens in the U.S. will affect India. Whatever happens in India will affect the U.S. and the rest of the world. Think about even this week, we had, you'd be hard pressed not to hear about India or not to come across a multinational that hasn't has no exposure to India. India has been mentioned at the AI summit. They were, sponsoring it, co-sponsoring. The Munich Security Council summit took place. There was concern there. And there was even concern at the Wolf Research conference in New York City in the automotive industry, regarding semiconductors. So, I think we can't assess tariffs on their own. We have to actually assess them, each and every one carefully. But what we have to recognize is that the services industry is a concern. We also have to recognize that India, foreign institutional investors, for example, hold $800 billion in Indian equities, right? So the focus should be on stability. We've entered the fourth industrial revolution, so it's not just about the military, but it's interdependence. A sluggish global economy may reduce the demand potentially for services such as IT, consulting, and financial services, which is significant. And then if we think about H-1B visas, which has come up in conversations, now it's part of the national, discussion in the United States. Prior, the only time that I would hear about H-1B visas is from, my students in the classroom, because they knew everything about the visas, because that was their number one priority. And today, you have over 300,000 students coming from India every year. So the H-1B visa needs to be increased. There's been an acknowledgement of that. And we need to keep up with the times. The times are changing. And so there's more FDI that's coming into the U.S. from India, and it's continuing to grow in the U.S. So as I think about these discussions, I'm thinking about it, conceptually. India is defining itself independently and with stakeholders in a multipolar world.
That's right. Those are the initial assessments, of course. There, Major General Sanjay Soy, your thoughts?
Absolutely. I would say that since, yesterday morning in US, things are totally different. And what few things we noticed during the joint address and during the press conference is the trust in each other. Both of them trust each other. Both of them faith. Both of them are go-getters. Both of them are nationalists. They both want, Trump wants to make America great. Modi wants to make India great. And both are deal makers. Now, and Trump also has mentioned that Modi is tougher deal maker than me. So they understand the strength of each other. They understand the bonhomie. They understand the positive vibes which each other emanate. That has made a lot of difference. And yes, the number of issues, while Trump has made what Chitkara has rightly said, that they have gone for the study of tariffs. And tariffs is one issue. Probably US has been, Trump right from the beginning has been very chary, and he is a man in a hurry. He wants to get the thing done. Both of them, Modi and Trump, are go-getters. So few deals which I look at it are one of the major achievement was, I think announcement was return of Tahawwur Rana, because Trump mentioned that both countries, India is affected by Islamic radicalism, and similar is the case with the US. So return of Tahawwur Rana will be a major achievement. And yes, we have also given list of some Khalistani terrorists also. So that will also create a positive environment for return of those Khalistani elements. However, knowing the US, there would be some legal formalities which have to be done, which may take time. But yes, the process has begun, the thought process has begun. And he has also given hint of giving F-35s, which is they are quite restrictive about it, and this is a fifth generation fighter aircraft, the latest one in their arsenal, and they're not given to some of the NATO countries also. So if they're giving to India or thinking of giving to India, and like earlier engines for Tejas and other defense systems, whether it is the M22 guns or air defense or drones, that shows the strategic importance of India in the overall scheme of things in how the US look at the world. And India being a good strategic partner, we are the one who can assist the US, or we can partner with US, not assist. I would say we are partnering with US, whether in the terms of Quad or whether in terms of I2U2 or helping in or ensuring the free movement in Indo-Pacific region, and also are able to jointly counter the expansionist thinking of China. So I would say that yes, things have become very, very positive. Lot of things will happen, and I think both it will be a win-win situation for both. The Trump will be able to say that yes, I'm not. I'm still going ahead with the tariffs. India is ready to buy the energy. They are signing deals for purchase of energy, and India will be benefited if we are getting cheaper energy. There's nothing wrong in it. Why? We bought from Russia in spite of the sanctions against Russia. We bought from Iran. We are buying from Middle East. So there's nothing wrong. We will take our national interest first, and yes, we will buy. So it is a win-win situation. Both we will get the latest technology from India, from the US. India will get the latest technology, both in the defense sector. That will also help in making Atmanirbhar, because nobody can do everything on its own. Technology transfer, the engines, some parts have to come from outside, and that is how jointly these are done. I think very, very positive meeting. The vibes are very, very positive, and a lot of things will happen in times to come.
Right.
And one more thing I thought last to I will add, that imagine the meeting at every level. Jaishankar is meeting, Ajit Doval is meeting, Prime Minister is meeting, and who is of the US administration is meeting Prime Minister. That shows the importance of visit of Prime Minister given by the US administration.
Right, that clearly underscores the importance. Hold your thoughts. We'll, of course, discuss more in detail some of the aspects coming out from the bilateral. But I believe I'm also joined by my colleague Alistair D'Souza, who's joining us from Washington, D.C. this morning. For him, of course, the evening. Alistair, so we were just discussing some of the key takeaways from the bilateral, but you were there on the ground. You were, of course, witness to what the interactions that took place between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. According to you, what do you think missed the cameras? What do you think escaped the cameras that we should know of?
Yeah, indeed. You can see that I'm dressed up all warmly here. It's absolutely freezing, but I can tell you in that room between Narendra Modi and Donald Trump, the temperature there extremely warm and cordial. The two men, as expected, continued their relationship on a great footing here that we saw in the last hour or so. It was really a time to celebrate the wins between the two men. So we saw that hug between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Some of the wins, there were lots to talk about. There was President Trump offering India these F-35 Sleuth military jets, something that it doesn't do with all countries. So that was one of the key highlights that we heard in that briefing between the two leaders. Also buying more energy for use, for example, LNG. There's going to be cooperation on AI as well, and counter-terrorism as well. Now, there were some lighter moments that we looked at where one of the reporters asked President Trump who between them is the toughest negotiator, which one is tougher. And you could see a smile come onto Donald Trump's face, and he turns around and says that it's Narendra Modi who's the tougher negotiator. Now, that said, there are certain issues that have been left unresolved, and one of them is tariffs. Big question still on how this is going to play out, because earlier in the day, Donald Trump talked about these tit-for-tat reciprocal tariffs. So if one country had a tariff of, say, 5% on a good, well, America would go ahead and slap the same amount on that country as well. So what's going to happen to that front as far as America and India goes? So that remains to be seen if we're going to see any kind of bilateral arrangement between the two sides. That was one of the unresolved issues that was not entirely addressed. Now, The other thing was the illegal deportees or illegal migrants who've been deported to India from the United States, those undocumented migrants. We've seen in India those pictures that came through of many of them sent on an aircraft, 104 of them shackled, their hands and their legs. Well, that was one of the questions that was put to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That was brought up, and Narendra Modi really decided to talk about how one should be clamping down on the root cause of this problem, which is also tackling with America the problem of what he called the ecosystem of human traffickers. So clearly no mention of whether we're going to continue to see those military planes bringing more Indians shackled and tied, or shackled with chains as far as their hands and their feet are concerned. So, of course, India not disputing the fact that these individuals who've broken American law by coming here illegally should be sent back. The question, though, is the outrage over how they've been sent back. So one must wait and see how in the coming months or weeks, how that would potentially play out.
Right. Alistair, quickly before we let you go, what are the next steps now for both nations following this bilateral? We also saw Prime Minister having some key meetings ahead of this bilateral with Elon Musk specifically. So what do you think are the next steps now which could emanate from these meetings?
Right, indeed, with any of these meetings, you have the high-ranking officials coming together, as we've seen, lots of broad statements issued. We'll get to more detail in the next coming days, but then really begins the hard work, doesn't it, for officials at the lower rung to make sure that they are able to progress in order to deliver on all those things that have been talked about, whether it's LNG or AI or those defense deals. How do you go ahead and make sure all of that comes together cohesively? So that's going to be how things play out in the next couple of weeks and months.
Right, Alistair D'Souza there joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast at the moment. Going back to my guest now, Angela, as Alistair there was also referring to it, that, you know, there are some bits, of course, which still remain in the grey area. As far as reciprocal tariffs are concerned, President Trump has announced a study, a 6-month study to look into it, how to execute it, implement it. He's, of course, very bullish on that front. But at the moment, do you feel that India has dodged a bullet in a sense?
I don't want to comment on that. I mean, I just for now, let's just enjoy the moment. Let's just enjoy it and do our due diligence in ensuring that that whatever the outcome is, that it's a fair and equitable one. I think that we are again global cooperation is needed. There's an interdependence. There's increasing FDI by Indian companies here in the U.S. And at the end of the day, it affects, people, everyday people in our respective countries and around the world. And we're tackling problems like, establishing, so it's cybersecurity. And at the AI summit, for example, India was laying the groundwork for AI governance. And so I think the world, can take lessons from India in terms of how, public-private partnerships work. So in India, for example, with the digital, public, the infrastructure, that has addressed problems, in terms of accessing education. And so I think, the U.S. can learn from that. And also what, my fellow panelist had said about, the collaboration that's taking place in different sectors.
Right. Major General Sanjay Soy, returning to you now, the personal rapport the personal chemistry that we have been talking about for the past few days between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump was clear once again. In fact, President Trump was very generous with his compliments, also saying, although Alistair said it was on a lighter note, but calling Prime Minister Modi a great negotiator, a better negotiator than him, also saying that ties or relations with India and the US have in fact never been better. So do you think in a way the partnership between the two countries has been elevated to the next level?
There's no doubt. In fact, a few things, like imagine immediately after taking over, in spite of his hectic schedule, and when we are getting the things done, on the one side there's the Middle East, there's the Russia-Ukraine war going on, and he's meeting Prime Minister Modi, which shows the importance US is giving and to India, because India plays a very, very strategic role, and both are great strategic partners. Our business has grown, our import on defense from US has grown. We are no more only dependent on Russia. We are buying from Europe, we are buying from America, we are buying from Russia also. And so with this Trump, right from beginning, I mean, he's a man in a hurry and he's a go-getter. And one a good thing about dealing with the Trump is that if you deal with him, then it is done. I mean, otherwise, like in the earlier times, they'll keep delaying the process. Here is made the announcement: Tahawwur Rana will be returned. The F-35 clearance, yes. After that, the discussions will take place. The official level meets will be there. But the fact is, the importance they are given of a visit of Prime Minister to US by that who and who of the US administration, whether it is intelligence or security or financial or Elon Musk, everybody has been meeting Prime Minister. Prime Minister had a very hectic day, and but that is what made use of each and every minute of the time spent in US. And the joint press meeting and their address both highlighted the chemistry between the two leaders. And yes, I'm looking at the win-win situation. Tariffs you had mentioned, yes, tariffs will go up, and India has also worked on during the budget. We have also announced some reduction in tariffs, and probably I look at it in a different manner, that Indian industry will become more competitive. We need to be more competitive to be able to sustain on our own without protectionism. So it has got both advantages and disadvantages. And Trump also looking at the promises made to his people that America will be made great, and tariffs is one part which is doing across the globe. India's India will be very less affected, because America is importing just about 2.4% of total imports from across the globe. We have huge potential of exporting a lot to US, and US also has a huge potential doing raising the trade to the next level, which is just about $130 billion. And though India has a surplus of about $46 billion, but that is what causes the issues with Trump. He wants to reduce this balance. But yes, we will be buying the energy. We are buying F-35, and US, our export to US will increase. I think it is going to be a win-win situation. The chemistry speaks it all. And I think next 6 months we will see a lot of things will shape up. Yeah, totally.
Right. It seems to be a win-win situation for India and the United States. In fact, there are a lot more highlights that we would want to talk about, but I would request both my guests to stay with us as we head into a very short break, but lots more coming up on the other side, as I mentioned. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching NDTV special broadcast of Prime Minister Modi's US visit. We just heard from both the leaders, President Trump as well as Prime Minister Modi, in a joint address following that bilateral. We were in fact discussing several aspects of the bilateral meeting with our guests. But before we go back to them, let's listen into some of the other statements that came through after that key crucial meeting.
There is truly a special bond between the United States and India, and the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy. And I believe the world's largest country in terms of the numbers of people. And today the Prime Minister and I are announcing a framework to strengthen those ties even further economically. And the U.S.-India Compact for the 21st century is a historic initiative that will deepen every aspect of our partnership and our friendship. I think we're going to have a very good relationship with China. I got along with President Xi very well until COVID. That was a bridge too far. But until then, I got along with President Xi very, very well. We were very close as leaders go. I don't want to be naive, but as leaders go, I think we were very close. And I think that China is a very important player in the world. I think they can help us get this war over with Ukraine and Russia. And I look at India, I do see the skirmishes on the border, which are quite vicious, and I guess they continue to go on. If I could be of help, I'd love to help, because that should be stopped. That's been going on for a long time, and it's quite violent. It's quite violent, but I would hope that China and India and Russia and U.S. and all of us can get along. It's very important.
आतंकवाद के खिलाफ लड़ाई में भारत और अमेरिका दृढ़ता से साथ खड़े रहे हैं। हम सहमत हैं कि सीमा पार आतंकवाद के उन्मूलन के लिए ठोस कार्रवाई आवश्यक है। और मैं राष्ट्रपति जी का आभारी हूं कि उन्होंने 2008 के जिसने भारत में नरसंहार किया था, उस मुजरिम को अब भारत के हवाले करने का निर्णय किया है। भारत की अदालतें उचित कार्यवाही करेंगी। फ्रेंड्स, आज हमने द्विपक्षीय व्यापार को 2030 तक 2 गुना से भी अधिक बढ़ाकर $500 बिलियन तक पहुंचाने का लक्ष्य निर्धारित किया है। हमारी टीमें एक पारस्परिक लाभकारी ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट को शीघ्र संपन्न करने पर काम करेगी। भारत की ऊर्जा सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित करने में हम ऑयल तथा गैस ट्रेड को बल देंगे। ऊर्जा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में निवेश भी बढ़ेगा। न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी क्षेत्र में हमने स्मॉल मॉड्यूलर रिएक्टर्स की दिशा में सहयोग बढ़ाने पर भी बात की।
Right, Angela Chitkara and Major General Sanjay Soy still with us. Major General Soy, coming to you first, you know, the comments about China. We heard both President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, they refer to it, of course. So in terms of the tackling China, how do you think you would assess the statements which have come out from this joint address? In fact, we just heard both of them talk about it. So how would you assess the situation in terms of US's equations or evolving equations with China, and how should India view it?
In fact, yes, China is one country that I think nobody can ignore in the world, and US also. In the present scenario, countries are dependent on each other for technology, for trade, for exchange of knowledge. So nobody can grow alone, and that is what Trump has mentioned. And yes, he is rightly so. Today, if you see in India and China also trading, we are also doing business in spite of the strained relations. And China is one of the largest trade partner of US. They cannot ignore it. There are a lot of things which they get from China. Their major concern is irrational tariffs by China. The major concern is China's expansionist thought process, China's views on Taiwan, China trying to control the South China Sea and Indo-Pacific region. So those are the concerns. But however, that is one side, and other side is trade. Probably China also knows this, because if China is doing more than $1,200 billion with the US and EU, that is why probably China is not supporting Russia openly. They're not giving any arms and ammunition to Russia openly. So because they also cannot think of ignoring US and EU because ultimately their economy is export-based economy. If that gets hurt, the China will suffer badly. However, the US relation with India and they caution and they also want to diversify towards India. They also want to diversify a lot of businesses and investment towards India. At present, also, whether in the industry or in the FII manner, in the stock industry, a huge investment, a US investment is one of the largest. So that is where they are looking at India as an alternative, want to develop it as an alternative. They want to stop total dependence of China, and especially after COVID, the things are not same, and they, of course, looking at China at present not as a competitor, but what his thought process is that probably they can jointly work together, but they definitely want to look India as an alternative.
In fact, there was, of course, the offer also from President Trump of asking India to, in terms of defense procurements, to buy F-35 fighter jets. But the other concern, of course, which President Trump expressed in their joint address, Angela, coming to you now, is ending the war in Europe. In fact, ending the war in Europe and Middle East have been part of President Trump's campaign as well. And in a way, he has seen India as an ally. Prime Minister Modi also said that their stand has been clear right from the beginning, that they are not neutral, but that India has always been on the side of peace. And what emanated from the joint address today also is that US is counting on India in a way to also be an ally in terms of solving or resolving some of these big geopolitical challenges that US faces.
Thank you for the question. And it's, you know, to me, it comes as no surprise. It's almost, it's like, it's just natural for the US to lean into this relationship with India because they're better together. And as the world is realigning geopolitically, and multinationals are figuring out their global supply chains and lessening their exposure to China, you know, Prime Minister Modi is, you know, is coming, you know, across as a lovely statesman, and given India's longstanding relationships with Russia, for example, and Israel, Prime Minister Modi could be very helpful in just being a sort of intermediary and diplomat, you know, in fostering better relations and even providing guidance to the United States. I think together they're better together. You know, as we think about China, excuse me, we should be thinking about maybe, you know, there's the IMEC in the Middle East. So the IMEC, as you may know, is the India, Middle East, Europe corridor. And that is something, you know, that's being built in response to lessening exposure to China. There's discussions with my clients on semiconductors and manufacturing in India. I remember being in Singapore last year, and there were MOUs that were being signed on semiconductor, you know, setting up businesses in India, and, you know, between India and Singapore. So what I've come to observe, one of the highlights this week has been how India is everywhere. And that goes back to Davos, the Davos campaign. You know, you may not remember, but I certainly do. And it was back in 2006, a long time ago, India Everywhere campaign. And India certainly, you know, through investing in these public-private engagements and partnerships within India and globally, where they're starting to see the, you know, the benefits now I recently wrote an opinion piece. I co-authored an opinion piece in Fortune magazine in the U.S. One of the questions that I had posed with my co-author, Curtis Chin, of the Milken Institute was, can a make in India and a made in America coexist? And we believe it can. We believe that together, and I agree with Major General, that together, U.S. and India are better together. And the relationship now is the best I've ever seen it. In fact, from a media coverage standpoint, I've never seen so much attention on India. I mean, you've seen the room. Your reporters actually have been reporting on it. I mean, the entire international media was there. You would be, there was a time when the U.S. markets would be covered. The markets would be covered. And, they wouldn't even mention India. Or if something happened on the other side of the world in the markets, it wouldn't affect us here. But today, we're so, interconnected and interdependent that there is a dire need for global cooperation
Right.
with regard to security as well.
Right. MAGA plus MEGA is equals to, it's the formula for success. That's one of the quotable quotes which has come out from the joint statement that we heard a short while back. I request my guests to stay with us. We will have to go into a very short break, but we'll discuss a few more aspects further on this bulletin. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We are, of course, discussing the mega bilateral meeting which took place between Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. and the joint address that followed right after that. Angela Chitkara and Major General Sanjay Soy still on the broadcast with us, discussing some of the key aspects which have come out. Major General Soy, returning to you now, if we look at the other big takeaway which has come through for India, especially when it comes to cooperation in terms of countering terror, is the green signal that President Donald Trump has given to extradition of Tahawwur Rana. That was something which had been going through the legal corridors for a while. India has, of course, been pushing for justice for the 26/11 victims. And even the US Supreme Court had, in fact, junked the plea put in by Tahawwur Rana, but now the final stamp of approval has come in from President Trump. That's also a big win for India in a way, with Prime Minister Modi being in the room when President Trump actually made that announcement.
Absolutely. I think, and Prime Minister Modi acknowledged that also, this big announcement of extradition of Tahawwur Rana. And because both the countries are against terrorism, there's no doubt. US and India have always taken strong stands against any kind of terror activities across the globe, not only against India. Because terror is against humanity, terror is against innocent people, terror is against, it does not see any race, it does not see any gender, or whether it is children, women, or men, anybody. For that matter, India has always taken a big stand, and I think this is a very welcome step. This adds another, say, a positive in the deals which are taking place between India and US. And yes, I think this will also send a strong message to other terrorist groups or terrorists who are taking shelter in US and Canada, that they can also be extradited. The action will be taken against them. They cannot feel safe in US. So I think it will be a good message. And I think we are grateful to US and we are grateful to Trump for that. And I would also like to say that, like I had mentioned earlier, Trump is the one person, ho gaya to ho gaya. I mean, it is done means it is done. He is a very strong personality. He's a go-getter. He's a man in a hurry. I mean, imagine he's just not even a month and so many announcements, so many decisions have been taken as if Trump 2 is different from Trump 1. And that is where probably we need to understand, and India has understood the importance they are giving to India. And these are few gestures like sale of F-35, release of Tahawwur Rana, because both countries are affected by security concerns. Yeah, Tolima.
Right. A final word now from Angela. How do you see this bilateral meeting in any way influencing future engagements now between India and the United States?
Great question. Great question. So my hope is I'd love to hear more about foreign direct investment in the United States, about Indian companies that are actually investing in the United States, and how they're contributing to local economies, how they are creating jobs, how they are innovating, and how the tariffs, again, we cannot look at the tariffs just as tariffs alone. First, we have to look at it very carefully, right? Each and every one. The services sector is going to be, exposed. But then we also need to figure out how that affects H-1B visa. I mean, Donald Trump, President Trump had said, he reminded us we're living in the 21st century. Well, everything needs an upgrade. Everything does. Our systems need their structure, organizational structures, our leadership, our thinking, soft skills. You have global capability centers that are being built in India. You have companies that are teaching these centers, people, soft skills on how to integrate into a globalized world. We are in a globalized world, and we have to make sure that that there's reskilling that's also involved. There's financial inclusion that's involved. So there are lots of issues that need to be addressed. But the H-1B visa is again, it's the tariffs, it's the FTI, it's H-1B visa is tied to innovation, which ties to companies that are that have a license to operate in the United States, that are creating jobs. So that's what makes the world go around. That's what the economy, and living in a globalized world, the global economy is like. So that's my hope, is that there's more cooperation that's not just limited to military, but that involves just the day-to-day, just the day-to-day of global citizens.
Right. Angela Chitkara, Major General Sanjay Sois, thank you so much for joining me on the broadcast right after that bilateral meeting and the joint statement discussing all what it means for us and the world in terms of this very, very important meeting that took place in Washington, D.C. On that note, we'll be taking a very short break, but we'll continue with our special coverage right here on NDTV 24/7. Stay tuned.